Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on and taking the time out of your day.
Chris, thanks for having me.
Yes. So I have Arash with me today. He is one third of the original founding Prehab guys, correct?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
There's Mike, is it?
Mike and then Craig. Yeah, the three
Okay.
of us started it almost 10 years ago now.
Almost. I know I was going to say you're coming up on a decade and you guys went to physical therapy school together.
That's correct.
And that's kind of when the Prehab guys was first conceptualized. So for listeners, maybe go into a brief history of how you came up with the name and what the original concept was, and then kind of where we are today.
Totally. So it was during second year of PT school that we started the Prehab guys. And the thought was actually we were doing our clinical rotations at the time. And we realized that people came in very reactively after these issues have gotten really bad. And unfortunately, at that time, the information online just wasn't really that great. And so people would follow the wrong information and then they'd get worse. And then they'd see us in the clinic. And we realized the value of getting information when they need it, and also the value of making sure that they have good information. So people would follow people that maybe looked the part and had a good body, but we're not physical therapists talking about, let's say, shoulder pain, back pain. So we then another piece actually to that is that people would always come in complaining or telling us that they thought PT was all about massage, and they were surprised that we would give them all these exercises. I think the narrative has changed a bit over the last decade, but so that was the original reason why we started almost 10 years ago during PT school, and it was great because we would learn so much at school and during our rotations, and I feel like creating content is a great way of challenging yourself to really understand that and bring that to life with your spin on whatever concept it is that you're learning. So we've actually learned a lot just from creating the content itself.
I'm sure. And was your first digital outlet, was that YouTube or were you Instagram?
It was Instagram. It was Instagram back when you were only limited to 15-second reels. And so we just posted we would like once a month film tons of videos and then post it throughout the month. And from there, we repurposed content through a lot of different platforms, YouTube being one of them. And YouTube, it's meant for long form, but we just wanted to get exposure everywhere with these short form videos. And eventually we started getting a little more specific to each platform. But at first it was just the same content on every platform, not really specialized to each one.
Well, I'd love to talk about that for a quick second.
Yeah.
Just diversifying your content based off of the platform, because that's something that I personally have decided to start prioritizing. And I think it's easy to just simply make one video that you think is good and be like, oh, I'm just going to put this everywhere. But people that are actually loyal followers that are wanting to seek out different types of information from you are going to not want to see the same thing in four different places. So how do you categorize and then organize how you're going to post on YouTube versus Instagram versus TikTok or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that the fundamental content can be similar across the platform. Let's say you're talking about shoulder pain and doing these rotator cuff exercises, for example. However, the packaging of it just has to be different if you want the platform to do as best as possible on each platform. Yeah, there are a lot more, let's say, carryover with like TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts, but it is still fundamentally a little different. And you have to, for us at least, if we want to repurpose content, we try to optimize for one platform and then repurpose on other ones. However, it's important to try to look at the analytics and make sure that when you're packaging the content that you are intentionally making it for one platform. If you're trying to make it for all platforms, I think you're going to end up not doing well on any of the platforms. That's that. And, you can even talk about the same content in different ways. YouTube, it's much more for long form. And if you explain the video a little bit more, explain the exercises, provide some rationale, I feel like you can use that same short form video in a long form. It's the same content, it's just packaged in a different way. And I think that's pretty important to optimize for each platform's algorithm.
Mhm. Do you have a favorite platform that you like creating content for?
I personally love the short. I know that long form is nice to be able to explain the nuances. I like I've learned to like the short form stuff a little bit more. And then I do like podcasts like this where we can sit down, authentically have a conversation. But the middle ground of it is not my favorite. I feel like there's a lot of prep work needed for like a 5-10 minute YouTube video, and then a lot of post production where I like the extremes of the short form and more of the long form podcast style. What about you?
No, I was going to say that's exactly the same for me. Like my sweet spot is give me a day where I can batch 5 Instagram reels and do the voiceovers and be done in like half a day, or put me on a podcast where I'm talking to somebody for 40 minutes. I haven't even really delved into the YouTube content creation because slightly because of the fear. I know that people say it's a lot of work to make a YouTube video. And I don't even know what I would want that to look like, if that's a voiceover, if that's me talking to the camera, but I just know it would be a lot more effort. So I'm holding back on that one.
Yeah, the good thing with YouTube though is it's very search intent based. So if there's a specific niche that someone is creating content for, it's much easier to be found. Like I know people use TikTok and Instagram a lot more now for search intent, but it's nowhere near YouTube and Google search where it's providing YouTube videos for. So that part is nice in terms of discoverability, but yeah, the effort and then. Yeah, the work that it takes is just a heavier lift than, creating the 5 reels that you're talking about in a half day.
Right. The beauty of YouTube, though, is I also think the content lives on forever. I mean, sometimes I'll still go back and watch nothing related to rehab, but like really good music videos or a live concert that's been on YouTube since 2008. Like people can go back to your point and search it, and if you're big enough, like you guys are, you're also generating income from those views forever,
hmm
which
It's
is great.
actually kind of crazy that that's the case for blogs and for YouTube, where you create it once and it lives forever. And those actually the for us the blogs and YouTube videos that have done the best, it's like 10% of the content creates 90+% of the views and engagement that we get. So it is a few of those big hitters that were from way back that are actually doing well for us, which is kind of crazy because we're still doing the work creating content, but that's not moving the needle nearly as much as some of those older pieces.
Interesting. Which ones are doing really well right now?
A couple of the topics are pain in between your scapula, exercises for runners, plantar fasciitis is always a big one, QL,
Classic.
yeah, general back pain. Those are like the big four that we usually see do well on both blogs and YouTube, which is very search intent based. So you get an idea for what people are looking up.
Right, right. So you have now on Instagram, you have 1.3 million followers. And then on YouTube, I'm not stalking you guys, but 417,000 subscribers.
Is that what it's at?
I did my research. So that's like, I mean, those are huge numbers, especially for less than 10 years. I mean, I guess it sounds like a long period of time, but I think that's great growth for the time period you're considering, given you guys started back in 2016. What do you think led to the growth? Well, I guess we'll start maybe on Instagram since that's in the millions, which is huge. When did you see that spike and what do you think led to it?
Yeah, I would say that there wasn't really a specific spike that we had, and for us, with this is true kind of for all platforms. Everything slowly grew over time, and for us, the biggest thing was just making a plan and sticking to it. So consistency was the goal. We made a very clear plan that we were going to create one post a day since 2016, and we've stuck to it. So
You've
it's
done one post a day every day.
pretty much every single
That's
day.
incredible.
Yeah. So, and I know a lot of people kind of get stuck because they're trying to create the perfect piece of content or trying to edit it perfectly or make sure that it's, gets that wow factor. Ultimately, as long as you stay consistent, I think that's one thing. And then while you're doing that, it's important to experiment and improve what you are doing. I think, the only thing that I know for sure is that the platforms change, the algorithms change, the way that people like to receive content changes, and so it's important that you evolve with that as well. And so I think experimenting, looking at the analytics as you're creating new content is a very important way to see what is doing poorly and why, and how can you improve it to make sure that you're essentially just less wrong over time.
Yeah, I like that. I think the most boring advice, but the most relatable and true is the consistency is key. When people ask me how to get into starting to create content and what's the trick of the trade, I'm like, I don't think there is one. I think it really does come down to, can you just stick with this thing and not give up when it doesn't blow up in 6 months? It takes time and effort, and yeah, committing to something that you're going to do this until you decide not to anymore.
I think that on that point, yeah, it's interesting because I also want to add, I think it's important to have an idea of why you're doing what you're doing. I think a lot of times people don't have that anchor, and when something gets difficult, they haven't really tied it down to their purpose. And so I think it's important to make clear what your purpose is. And for us, we made that clear from the get-go in terms of educating the public on what it is that physical therapy does and giving them the tools that they need when they need it. And so if you're just creating content to hit like 1 million followers, I think when things get difficult, it's very easy to give up, like you're saying, versus holding true to the mission. Because honestly, most people's mission, you don't need a lot of people. You just need like a few people that are very dedicated to that mission and on board and aligned with what it is that you're trying to preach.
Yes, 100%. And I also think, to your point about changing as the algorithms change and as the platforms change, it's important because I'm constantly auditing myself to see, like, okay, what performed well and why, but also at the same time learning to walk the fine line between, let's make sure that we're creating content that's going to get seen and the algorithm's not going to hide it, but also still staying true to like my specific art, or your, like the Prehab guys, they're kind of their recipe. Because if you're just following trends and just trying to get views, you'll kind of lose yourself in the noise, and it won't be as fun, I don't think.
I totally agree with that. That's why I don't overemphasize on that, but it's important to have an idea because like let's take the extreme end. I know someone that schedules their post for the entire year and they don't look at it at all. That's like, no iterations, no experimenting, and then after the year, improving and learning from things. And then there's the other end of like spending too much time on all of these different platforms, analyzing things to try to make sure that each post is like this grand slam, and that's also not going to be the case. So yeah, it's somewhere in between, and really sticking true, like you said, I think is important because it's impossible to explain all the nuances with short form content, and you want to make sure that you're achieving your goal, and the goal shouldn't be just to get 1 million followers or whatnot. I think if you focus, like when I talk to people that are starting out, usually I recommend the goal being input based versus like performance based. So the goal is like creating 5 posts a day for 3 months would be the goal versus trying to get 10,000 followers or whatever that might look like, because you have full control over the inputs.
That's a really good way to frame it. I'm also feeling a little like underperforming because I don't think I've definitely never done a post a day, and creating 5 in one day, rarely does that happen. So maybe I need to up my game a little bit.
Yeah, I will say over time, there's so much content every year. There is more content being created than there ever has been in the history of content creation. So it's exponential growth. So now it's much more about quality content than volume of content. So I think it's totally fine. We've even decreased cadence on a lot of the platforms because we're like, more is not necessarily better the way it used to be. Now it's more about quality content because a couple good pieces of content can do a lot better than 5 times more content that isn't really packaged well.
Let's talk about the Jane app for a second. If you haven't heard by now, Jane is my clinical management software that I use to manage everything in my day to day life that happens inside the clinic, whether it's patient documentation, AI scribe helping me with patient documentation, scheduling patients online, running reports,
creating my online booking link, and even sending automatic texts to patients to remind them of their visits, Jane is literally my go-to. You can get a 1-month grace period with my code PTRONI1MO. That's capital PTRONI, number 1, capital M, capital O.
Is there any specific things that you've noticed change on Instagram or on YouTube over the past year that you've kind of had to learn to course correct and change the way that you operate?
Yeah, on YouTube, I would say not a whole lot in terms of its long form. I think it's actually it's been pretty consistent. The short form aspect of YouTube, I know they're trying to compete with platforms like TikTok and Instagram, where there's a bunch of quick reels. So I would say with Instagram, it's adopted a lot of what TikTok has found success with in terms of these very short, quick hitter posts where you have very fast pacing. We always talk about how you have the first second to get someone to watch the next 3 seconds, and that's the entire hook. And then from there, hopefully they stay on if they like the hook. So it's very important to package those first few seconds. And I think Instagram has started giving a little more equal playing field to everyone that's creating content, not just the big platforms. And if you look at, big platforms, maybe like even our platform, let's say it's of a bigger size, we used to have a huge advantage based on the way things were with, because I think the three things that the algorithm really looks at in terms of figuring out your feed is what kind of content you look at, how often you engage with previous platforms or previous profiles, and then how big the profiles are that are creating the content. But I feel like that third bucket has shrunk over time, and they don't take that into consideration as much. And that's why you see some smaller accounts getting massive spikes in engagement. So it's actually a good thing for new creators in terms of having that opportunity that previously wasn't there, but it makes it difficult for larger creators because you don't have that advantage of having created that following. You still have to work just as hard to get the attention of everyone else.
Yes, it's been interesting to see just over the past few months, the reach. Like, I feel bad knowing that some of the content I'm making, the people that follow me, maybe only like 20,000 of them will see it. And I'm like, well, no, because they followed me because they like my stuff. I would like for them to see it, please.
I
But
know.
you got to roll with the punches.
That's the thing. Yeah, it's tough. And so that's why if we have a certain message that we really want our following to see, just organic content is becoming, a smaller percentage of the reach that you can get even with your own following. So we've started doing some paid ads, retargeting our social followers, so that way they can see whatever message it is that we're looking to make sure they do see, because yeah, it's only moving more that direction, it seems like.
Yes. And the pendulum just will swing, and it's hard to know what it's going to do. You just kind of have to keep chugging along.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I get a lot of questions from followers. I haven't run the numbers or done too many analytics on who exactly is following me and what they're doing, but it seems like a lot of physical therapists, a lot of PT students, chiro students, that realm of people, they follow my content, and they are always wanting to know, like, is it necessary to have an online presence? Or if I want to go out and do my own thing, kind of like I did, do I even need to do that? Is this even something I should focus on, or should I just focus on like the in-person marketing? And I know you guys now have an in-person clinic as well, right? You guys are in LA.
That's correct. Yeah. Prehab physical therapy.
Yes, which is so cool. But what would you say to those people?
That's a great question. So I actually did a talk at CSM earlier this year, and I had a slide that said 143. And the reason why I put that slide on there is that people spend on average in the US 143 minutes on social media a day. A day, that is.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. That's more time than they spend on average cooking, exercising, and commuting. All three things are less time than the time they spend on social media. So it's important to understand that piece. Now, in terms of do you have to, I don't think you necessarily have to be successful, because I've seen clinics be successful without it. I think that it increases your probability of success drastically. So if that's the goal, I think you should do all the things that you can to improve that probability of success. One big thing that I think it helps with is not so much that you're going to get all these new people flooding in your doors. I think that the biggest thing that it helps with is, 9 out of 10 people search their provider before seeing them, or the facility that they're going to see before seeing them. And I think a big thing nowadays is that getting people to convert becomes more and more difficult with all these options that people have. They can go to 10 different clinics now. And so the goal is, if they see your clinic or see you as a person, that they resonate with you, they understand what you're about. And that's the sales process in itself. That's kind of that resume of who you are. And hopefully that does a good job of getting someone interested enough to come see you, because most people now don't even give the people calls. They decide on their own prior to even coming in the door. So I do think that it will help increase the probability of success. And I don't think you need to go crazy with it to meet that goal. But I tell people that even with our combined following of, like, let's say close to 3 million now, if we post, hey, our clinic is accepting 10 new patients, there will be people that reach out, but they're likely not going to be in the area. And then if the ones that are in the area are looking to likely go through their insurance, so maybe that leaves 1 or 2 people out of the 50 people that have reached out that would be an appropriate patient. So that's not the most effective strategy by itself, but I think that in combination with some of the local community building, I think that you can kind of hit both of those. But I'm curious what you think about that question.
Yeah, 100%. I preach the same thing. I never want people to think that my clinical success, like in person, comes from social media, because I think that can be easily misconstrued. They're like, oh, of course she's doing well. Like, she's got 100-something thousand followers on Instagram. Like, people must just be banging down her doors. But what people don't realize is that, like, a lot of those people don't live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The vast majority don't live within a 10-mile radius of me.
Yeah.
Most of my patients that find me, whether that's from like local marketing events, word of mouth, random ads that my brother put up around town, they don't even know that I have an Instagram. And it's not until once we've met, and then, Siri's kind of freaky and she shows them my content then on Instagram, and then they realize. So I always like to point out that it's not crucial, but it can wildly change your rate of success, and even just generating a different stream of income if that's something that you're interested in. So I like it for 2 reasons. I like it to showcase what you're about. So if someone's going to search you, especially like the millennials, the Gen Zs, like I'm going to look people up on Instagram before I go see them. So just even if you have like 2 followers, but you show that you're a real person and you're like an actual practitioner that is in the area, super helpful. And then if it's something that you want to really like steer into that lane and really work on content creation, you can diversify your income stream, which is nice as well. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, no, I agree. Lots of opportunities that we didn't even know about have opened up just because of this. So I agree with that aspect.
Yeah, I was wanting to touch on that a little bit too, because it started out with content creation, and I know how that can generate revenue, but you also have an app. You also have programming that you do for people. You have the in-person clinic. How has that evolved over the years?
Yeah, it's evolved quite a bit. And I think that's kind of the most important thing to focus on as an entrepreneur, is figuring out where resources are best spent based on the company goals that you have. So initially we had individual programs. The first product that we had was an exercise library that was for clinicians. And a lot of clinicians don't even know that we have this, but it's meant to be an HCP platform. You build programs out, send it out to your patients and clients.
We'll plug it really quick. So it's called the Prehab Guys. Is it on the App Store?
It's the Prehab exercise library. It's on the website. There's no app for it, actually. It's just a website that you create programs. So then that was our original focus, was creating that, because actually more for us that we didn't have an HEP platform that we liked. So we were like, let's just create one. We already have all the exercises. So that was the first product. And then over time, we realized that this need for patients getting help when they need it has been a big issue, especially that gap between when they see their physician and get a scheduled appointment with their PT can be like a month. So that's a great time to plug it in. Or for the busy person that has an issue, but it's not bad enough to where they need to go see PT or they don't think they need to go see PT. Those people can do some things at home. And right now, the best thing is, content on social media. So we wanted to help those individuals out as well. And so we created an app. The app helps people get out of pain and prevent injuries or reduce the risk of injuries. That's probably the big item right now that we have most of the team working on. And then over the years, as we kind of expanded our location and grew towards a bigger size, we realized that there's a lot of value in having a clinic in person as well. It's a great place to test different things that we're doing in the app. And then also more PT Brains really helps us with elevating not just our content, but our company as a whole to being more and more evidence-based and making sure the programming in the app is continuing to evolve as well. So yeah, those are our three pillars of the business, and it kind of ebbs and flows in terms of what the main focus is between those three. But we have people working on individual things. It's kind of hard to have numerous items to focus on, and you realize as you grow the business, it's kind of like you need to make sure the focus stays as narrow as possible. If everyone is working on everything, it makes nothing get done well, kind of like to the same analogy that we used earlier with trying to create the same platform or same post for all different platforms.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's evolved quite a bit, but yeah, it's going to continue to evolve and change. That's for sure.
Yes, that's exciting. I think the growth is really cool. I mean, I don't think 2016 you could have ever imagined that this is where you'd be,
Totally.
right? Yeah.
One step at a time, and not until the pandemic. We never really went fully in until 2020, actually. 2020 was when we were like, okay, let's really commit to the business. There's this opportunity because not many clinics are even staying open right now. Let's just focus on this. And most people were going online. And that's when we did notice a spike in revenue. That is not necessarily social media, but then we reinvested it back into the business. Got our first office space, and that made it really easy because we can film content whenever we want. Beforehand, actually, I don't know how you filmed content before you had a space, but we would just rent space in different places and just film once a month.
Yeah, I was, well, it's just little old me, solo me. So I didn't even have like two other friends to work on it with, but I would just go, I'm a member at several different gyms in town, and I didn't even have a tripod. I would just set my phone up, try and be like very inconspicuous, and the content didn't do very well. It wasn't until I had my own space that it really started to take off. And yeah, I think that speaks for itself. Like the consistency in the location and what I was doing reached more people than me just being in a random dark gym on like a Monday morning trying to film something.
Totally.
So
Yeah, it
yeah.
almost becomes part of the branding, like the location that you're in and the way things look and feel. It's all part of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And you guys have at this point, I mean, obviously the three founding fathers, and then you have like a whole content team and a couple PTs.
We have, I mean, it's difficult because there's a lot of contractors as well, or people that might be part-time, but I think right now we probably have about 30 total people that work with the business, and it comes out to just over maybe 23, 24 full-time equivalent. So I would say, yeah, there's about 5, 6 people on the clinic side, 6, 7 people on the marketing side, a couple on the customer success, about 6 people that are working on the app, and then 2 or 3 that are on the engineering team, just engineering as a whole. So it's I'm not sure how that math added up, but those are very, very rough numbers. And then
sounds about right.
yeah. Yeah, so there's all sorts of roles, and I know that most people will see the social media stuff because that's where the eyeballs are, but that's a very, very small percentage of the amount of time that's spent as a business. It's maybe 2% of the company's resources go towards that.
So have you been in clinic practicing at all since 2020, or did you kind of take a step back 2020 and really start to focus on the digital side of things?
Took a step back in 2020 to focus on digital side of things, and then as things opened up, went back into clinic care. And then as of recently, as we've scaled the business, the three of us have just been very minimally involved with the patient care. Like, yeah, some of the management and deciding what decisions to make for the clinic, but in terms of patient care, it's been very minimal as of recently, just because as the team has grown, it's so important to focus on how the business is performing as a whole in strategy and direction over any of the actual, what we consider like individual contributor work, which is like the execution of certain things, patient care being one of them. So that's where actually we're hiring a PT right now, so that we can continue to grow that side of the business as well. So that way it grows without us having to get too involved with the actual individual contributor side of the work.
That's exciting. Yeah. I mean, the PT patient care, especially if you're one-on-one for like the full hour, super time consuming, super rewarding. It's like the reason that you got into it in the first place.
Totally.
But there is a point where you have to start to make decisions like, okay, is it just going to be me in here grinding away and also trying to do 75 other things? Or am I going to seek out some help?
Exactly. And that's where it's important to make clear what the business goals are, and that helps drive where you put time and energy. The other piece of that, I think, selfishly, every entrepreneur should try to enjoy the process as much as possible. So I always think that it's helpful to do some sort of energy audit with like figuring out what it is that gives you energy versus takes energy away from you, and try to lean into those things. Because let's say worst case scenario, you start a business and it doesn't do well, and let's say you close it after 5 years, but at least you did the things that you enjoyed doing, and enjoyed that process because you leaned into the things that give you energy. You have to obviously combine it with what's best for the business. You can't only look at that independently, but I think that's often not looked at, and that leads to people not enjoying what they're doing. And it's a long-term game. Like, started almost 10 years ago. It's not like, even PT school where you can kind of push through for a couple of years and then be done with it. So you're building this in terms of your lifestyle, and you want to make sure that it's moving towards a place of life improving as the business does better.
I love that. Honestly, listening to you talk, if I just came in here blind and didn't know your background, I would not have guessed he's a physical therapist, because you just sound so well versed in the business side of things. So I mean that as a compliment. Like, obviously, clinical things because you are a PT, but I'm curious, how did you gain this business knowledge? Because it's not something that we go over in physical therapy school. At least it wasn't in my program. And I get a lot of questions asking, like, what resources should I use? Obviously, I think experience is like the number one thing that's going to get you from point A to point B. Is just trial and error. But are there any things that you'd recommend to people that want to get started in business and just don't even know where to go first?
That's a really good, thank you for that comment. And that's a really good question. I know that I've always wanted to go into business personally. I always thought my goal was going to have been to like open a bunch of practices and build entrepreneurship through that. But that didn't end up being the case as the online stuff started doing well. But I would say that I grew up in a house where my dad was a business owner, so I learned a lot through him. But I've always had an interest, and I've just learned through, and it's interesting, a lot of professions actually, there's the formal education of like going to an MBA or whatever, or getting a business degree. But I think that a lot of the content nowadays through podcasts and YouTube was a great starting place for me. I agree with you that actually doing the thing is the way that you get feedback in real time, and you're forced to learn and make decisions. I would also say the two big things that helped along the journey. We've joined a business academy that was super helpful. It kind of breaks down business in terms of like being evidence-based, where these are things that after looking at like 10, 20,000 businesses, these are the things that small businesses had in common, that they worked their way to becoming more of like a mid-market size business. And then, and they even talk about things like having vital signs of your business and tracking those metrics to make sure things are moving the right direction. That's one. And then the other piece is having a mentor or a coach. I think that's been super helpful. That person doesn't have to know all the answers, but as long as you can critically think and try to address the right problems with them, I think the business will continue to do well. So yeah, we've been fortunate to have a good business coach along our side as well. But it's tough because nowadays there's just so much content and resources available. And this is true even for PT, let alone business, but like it's hard for the consumer or the entrepreneur to know who to exactly listen to because there's so much information. And so half of the battle is just figuring out which person is the right person to listen to based on what I know as a person. So yeah, it's just and then, another thing is I really recommend journaling or having some time to objectively write down thoughts. I think this is good for anyone that's trying to grow and improve as a person, but I think that there are always going to be a million problems to solve once you start your business, and making sure that you're clear and trying to remove emotion from some of those decisions that you're thinking through, I think is helpful. And I think writing down is a great way to do that.
The writing it down piece is smart and something that I have started to implement more, even if it's just like brain dumping onto a piece of paper to clear your head and figure out like, what do I actually need to prioritize if I want this to work? So I totally agree. And I'm big on mentorship. I think it doesn't have to be something formal. It doesn't have to be even like a paid service. I saw a funny meme recently. It was like, if a guy is trying to sell you a course on how to become a millionaire, he probably hasn't figured it out yet, or something like
Totally
that.
agree.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
you
you
don't.
see so much of that nowadays.
Yes, you see so much of it, and it's like rather than going the route of like who can just suck you in from having a good paid ad, maybe try to find somebody in the field that you're wanting to work in that's been successful or is a few steps ahead of you, and reach out to them. Like it doesn't have to be some official like, will you be my mentor? But just like picking their brain, seeing if they can meet or Zoom or whatever, and just be resourceful that way. I think that's going to be a lot more fruitful than paying a bunch of money for a course that really you have no guarantee return on investment with that.
That's a good point that I think a lot of people, you have to be careful with who you listen to. Like there's a quote that if you listen to everyone, like that's the quickest way to get bad advice. And I think it's important to listen to the people that are closest to your goal, not closest to you. I think it's important to listen to people that are closest to you as well because they have your best interest, but it's important to make sure that the things that person that has achieved what you want at least gives you an understanding of how they did it. Now, it's not always going to be the same. Like if I wrote a playbook of how we went from 0 to 1 million followers 10 years ago, it's going to look different. It's almost like asking the person that won the lottery what were their numbers. It's like obviously not going to be the same. So you have to try to take that with a grain of salt as well, and make sure you adapt it towards your goals and wants and needs. But I totally agree with that sentiment of like having someone that is slightly ahead of you, not too far ahead, but like slightly ahead to help with that.
Yeah, too far ahead, they're going to be like, gosh, I don't remember.
Exactly.
A few steps ahead, they might be able to offer some good advice. And while to your point, like no one's story is going to be replicable. I can't do exactly what you guys did and hit the same numbers that you did, but general themes will be the same, like the consistency, having goal setting strategies, constantly auditing yourself as a business. All of those things are relevant and would help you improve. Okay. So if you could go back to your 2016 self and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be?
That's a good question.
You're like, just keep doing what you're doing, man. You got it.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I would say I'm not trying to use something that's too cliche.
I don't think anything is too cliche. They're cliches for a reason, you know?
Yeah. I would say be less afraid to fail. I think when you're in PT school and you're finishing PT school, like you're in debt so much and you want to make sure you're making the right decisions. And I think it's important to think through decisions carefully, especially big decisions. However, life is short, and if you fail, you might as well try to fail as fast as possible and learn from it and then improvise versus taking a long time. I think if anything, there could have been some gaps, some things that we did that could have been shortened in terms of iteration cycle, so that we evolved quicker. But I think we evolved and we grew. It's just at a slower rate than we could have with some of these decisions, like starting a practice and building out the space and whatnot. I would say businesses that start aren't going to survive for long, but I think that it's worth at least trying and not being afraid of failing with whatever decisions or whatever it is that you're wanting to accomplish. I think is how you should try to make decisions, at least starting off when you're younger in your career.
I love that. Yeah, I think the majority of the things I've learned, and if I look back on the life cycle of my very still new business, all the learnings came from things that didn't work well. Not like, oh, this is going so well, I've learned so much. Sure, some things will go well the first time you try it, but a lot of times it won't. And that's when you start taking notes and you improve your process. So I love that.
Exactly. That's when you honestly learn. Like if everything goes well perfectly all the time, there's no feedback to learn from.
I think that's just luck.
Yeah. That's almost impossible with any business, but that's where you really have to think through things. And I think a big focus that we've had recently is just building good systems, because you don't, James Clear said this, like you don't rise to the levels of your goal, you fall to the levels of your systems. And it's important to have those systems in place, because as things get busy or whatever might pop up, it seems like all these things are important, but making sure that you have good systems in place for what really matters, make sure that at least those things are achieved. And then great, you can jump towards whatever new thing you may want to accomplish, but you don't want to fall prey to the shiny object syndrome, and you want to stick to what you know is going to be best. And I think that those operational systems in place are important, especially as the company grows.
Yeah. What's next for the Prehab guys? Anything in the near future that you can get us excited about looking forward to?
Yeah, I wish I could talk more about this, but the library is something that we're actually focused a lot on. That is a resource right now clinicians use to create programs, like I mentioned earlier, to send to their patients and clients. But we are trying to make it where their patients and clients can prehab a lot longer than just that time when they're getting care. So that way it's a continuum of care, because how often do we see it where someone comes in for back pain, you give them things, they work with you for 2 months, 3 months, they're better, and then 6 months later they come back for that same issue. So we're trying to make it where the PT has more control, and I think that that's where some of these technology advances can help with making sure that PT can monitor care, or not even monitor care, but support care further out in helping that person prehab their body versus just get out of that pain, which is kind of the idea why we're preaching this whole prehab idea. You look at healthcare dollars, only 3% of the cost goes towards any sort of prevention and wellness. Everything pretty much is chronic illness. So trying to open up that door and make sure that people can stay healthy outside of just that care, I think is what we're trying to support.
Cool. Yeah. Preventative rehab, I think, is, at least in the cash-based PT world, things are definitely trending that way. And I personally love to see it, because yes, I'll get the patients that come in that have a specific injury that happened or they were referred by their doctor. But on the flip side, I'll get athletes that come in and are like, I kind of have something going on, but I actually want to just really tune things up and refine things and make sure that nothing gets any worse. And that's really fun to work with. That's when you get to be really creative too. So I love it.
Yeah. And there's so much to take into consideration with that. Like previous injury, what's the risk of an injury? Having that previous injury. So like making sure that they're getting those taken care of. What is it they're trying to get back to? I actually just tore my ACL a few months ago, and I had surgery. I'm on week 6 right now, but like it's not great.
I'm so sorry. Wait, how did you tear it?
I was playing soccer, and I played soccer my whole life, and I knew that I was taking inherently a little bit of a risk by playing a sport I don't play super often, and I should have done these things to prevent injury. Like I know that, but if I don't know, if someone was to be like, no, like make sure you do these things for a few months before jumping back into it. I know that most of these ACL injuries can be prevented. Like just doing these things reduce risk even over 50% sometimes. So, so I think these screens can be very helpful, or even working with someone preventatively can be very, very helpful, especially if you're trying to do higher level activity. But it's
Yeah.
hard to sell someone on prehab unless they really, really value their health. And I think that the narrative is shifting a bit. You see people like Peter Attia and Huberman talking about all these things that people are very interested in. And I always thought this is too technical for the layman, but some of them eat it up, and the layman is getting smarter and smarter, and they want to learn about their body. They want to know why, and it's awesome to see that. And I think it gives us a lot more value in the space to really be that person to help individuals during that process.
Exactly. And if you weren't motivated to do prehab, you heard it here first. He tore his ACL because the prehab guy didn't do his prehab.
I
So
know.
if only you had listened to your own advice.
I know. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. But this has been great. Seriously, I appreciate all of your advice. I think people are going to love to hear your take on everything we discussed because you've had great success and you're still learning along the way. Where can people find you? I know you guys are all over the internet, but you're working on lots of different projects. So what do we got?
Yeah, I would say at the Prehab guys through all the social media platforms. We do also have a podcast, the Prehab podcast, and then the website is theprehabguys.com. You'll be able to find the library through there, or if you're looking, honestly, some clinicians use our app as protocols as well for like all the different diagnoses that we cover. So the app is, you can purchase it on the website or also check it out through the app store itself. That's helping people get out of pain, prevent injuries.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is great.